the speakers from the last seminar on medical are over in the Knowledge Hut, if you want to talk to them. At the end of this seminar, the victims of the drug war, these speakers will come over to the Knowledge Hut and go out and hang with them, get your individual questions answered, hear their stories in more detail. Wait for that plane to pass and we'll start. 3, 2, 1. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to session number 2 of Sunday Hempfest 2014. Here we're talking about one of the heaviest subjects we can talk about. Have we won yet, everybody? Are the victims of the drug war still in jail? Yes. That's what we need to make people aware of. While we're out here in the park celebrating our victory, we have to understand this is only the beginning of the fight ahead. And to talk about the people that have so far been left behind, we have some great representatives. And I'll let them introduce themselves, but we got Carrie Boyder, Doug Hyatt, Kristen Floor, and Billy Fisher. Okay. And what's that? And New Jersey Headman and Fortune. And I mean, these are great advocates. Carrie has been tireless in her advocacy for the medical patients of Washington and elsewhere. Ed has been in their face for 20 years. My favorite thing Ed did, though, was they're a whole carload of narcs, and they're just sitting outside his house watching. He got tired of them sitting out there watching, and he goes over and tries to engage them. They don't want to roll down the windows to engage him, and he tries to engage them. He ends up shaving creaming their car.
I forgot about that. But everything on the internet is still there. That was 1997.
and Doug Hyatt's a local attorney with fire. He is no compromise. Doug was the loudest advocate against I-502. He told us the shit was going to hit the fan when it passed, and now he's here helping people who have gotten into the fan blades. And considering myself one of them, I'm angry as can be. I'm moderating myself. And Billy, if I have to introduce himself, he's a substitute. We're glad that he can appear. Jody Emery was supposed to take the stage today, but her husband, Mark Emery, was released from U.S. custody this week. And we can't blame her for not wanting this show. I don't think Mark's going to be back for a while. So go ahead. Let's just go in this order. Carrie, you want to get started?
So my name is Carrie Boyder, and I came into this when I was working in the Washington State Legislature. I had worked on policy, helping with medical marijuana, as well as the legalization initiative when it was in the legislative stages. And I thought that that was the way to end the drug war. I thought, we changed the state policy and we toppled the dominoes, and that would be the way to go about it. And I realized shortly after all of this that there were people in prison still for following the state laws, and that they were actually even dying there. And so I got outraged when I learned of a man who had died in federal prison in custody, and I decided that I was going to do something about it. And so I sought out his daughter and found his daughter and his former business partners, and wound up deciding that, hey, why doesn't anybody know that this guy's about to go on trial? He's one of only 5 medical marijuana caregivers in the country to ever take his case to trial, and why don't people know about it? And so I started reaching out to every person I knew from my 10 years in media, and I made sure that the country knew about him. And after that, his 85-year sentence was reduced to 5 years because of the outrage on the national level. And so I started realizing that, well, if more people know what's actually happening, that maybe they'll do something about it. And I realized my role in ending this was to actually make people aware of what was happening. And so since that first case, I've also worked on a case out of Michigan of a man who was a caregiver legally on state law, and he was taken to prison even though he's a dual organ transplant recipient. He's been denied his medication there. And I'm currently working with a family, the Kettle Falls Five, who were following our state medical marijuana law. And they were not selling marijuana, they were not distributing marijuana, they just simply were growing for themselves in a very small, collective, private fashion. And they were, an aircraft flew over and spotted them, and so they came in and raided them, and they're now facing a 10-year mandatory minimum prison sentence. And so I'm hoping by raising awareness to these issues that people like you will get more involved, because now you know it's really happening and you can actually do something to change it.
My name is Edward Fortune, the New Jersey Weed Man. And, you know, when I first started calling myself New Jersey Weed Man, it was a gimmick to get press attention, and it worked. You know, as Ed Fortune, half of these little stories probably wouldn't even went anywhere, but as NJ Weed Man, the press thought it was funny back in the 90s to be talking about this guy who keeps talking about legalizing weed, you know, and, but times have changed. Going from zero to hero. During that time, you know, I've been a victim several times. Not only because I openly violate the marijuana laws, because I do admit it, I've never compromised on that. You know, I've publicly said fuck the law, I smoke it anyway, you know, and I've always kind of just openly lived that way. But I have become a victim a couple times. I've been in prison for marijuana, and while I am extremely happy that people here can celebrate legalization in a way, and there's, you know, I think yesterday I heard the figure that there used to be 7,000 arrests in Washington State, and now there's pretty much down to 200, you know. Well, New Jersey, where I'm from, there were 22,000 arrests last year. I was one of them. Matter of fact, last August, when I left here, I was actually a speaker up here last August, and I went to court on September the 10th, and I got sentenced to 270 days for possession of marijuana. And the judge from the bench said he was not putting me in jail because of the possession. He was putting me in jail because of my attitude. You know, I wasn't charged with having a bad attitude, but see, my bad attitude's always been, I've been kind of like the fuck you guy, you know, like, and in the court space, I've always fought my cases. You know, 2 years ago, you know, a lot of lawyers told me not to do it, but I kept arguing. I got caught with an entire pound in New Jersey. And in New Jersey, a pound of marijuana gets you 7 to 10 years in jail. And it was my second time, so I could have got hit with these other charges, habitual offender charges too. Because there's still a whole war going on in other parts of the country. I got lucky that I knew about jury nullification, and I loudly argued that the law was wrong. All of my jurors knew exactly who I was. They knew my arguments. And while the prosecutor thought the jury's going to follow the law, they didn't. 7 out of 10 felt that my argument was right, the law was wrong, so I got a hung jury the first time. The prosecutor decided to do the case again. I think it was a bad move. Put me on a bigger pedestal. I started talking to the newspapers and really irritating the judges by saying I was, you know, conviction proof. Because I knew I only needed one. That's what a lot of people don't realize. This whole concept of the government putting you in prison can only happen if your peers do it. If you're charged, I keep telling people, if you're charged with a marijuana offense in this day and age where no one believes the government, I don't care where you're from, you can walk into the most Catholic of Catholic churches, I think, and talk to the choir, and there's people in the choir who don't think you should go to prison for marijuana. So why in a open court system that we're supposed to have, the jury of your peers, if you argue to your jury that the law is wrong and not you, there will be some members of the jury will agree with you and just say not, and you only need one. You know, a lot of lawyers say you can't do that. They can't do that. Lawyers can't do that. A citizen can do that. And this is one of the things I've been publicly advocating for people to engage in jury nullification openly as an offense. I don't even feel like I'm a defendant when I'm in court now. You know, I don't feel like I'm a defendant. I'm right. We the people, the government is wrong, and if I'm in front of a jury, that's what I'm going to argue. And the judge is supposed to be a neutral arbitrator, but they never are. They're mostly on the side of the prosecution. But who cares? The most powerful entity in the courtroom anyway is the 12 people on the jury. You can pretty much blow smoke at the judge if you wanted to. Tell the prosecutor, you know, bug off, and only talk to the jury. And you can do that by doing your openings and closing statements yourself. The advantage of doing that is you don't never get to get cross-examined. You know, I would say every defendant who is charged with a marijuana defense, when the prosecutor gets up and says what this case is about, they should get up and say what the case is about from their perspective. But anyway, let me shut up. I can go on and on and on about this. Peace. Learn about jury nullification.
Doug, I watched New Jersey Weedman's progress with his case in state court in New Jersey with glee, I can assure you. And while I agree with a lot of what he says about jury nullification and stuff, unfortunately in certain states, and especially in federal court, it's a little bit more difficult to pull off. I wish it wasn't. Some states actually allow you to argue jury nullification and argue that the law is wrong. If you view juries as mini legislators like I do, then it would make sense that I ought to be able to argue the law is wrong. And believe me, I would win, I think, almost all the time if I could do that. I don't think that drug cases have a lot of public support. I don't think any drug cases right now have a lot of public support. I've been able to get hung juries for a lot of folks simply because people don't agree with the drug war. And you know, that's a fact. If you look at the polling and you look at where we're headed, folks are sick of the drug war, folks are sick of their liberties being constrained, they are sick of the racial disparity, the obvious racial disparity in the drug war, which is staggering racial disparity that we do not talk about enough in this country. We like to lie about stuff like that to ourselves. We like to talk about post-racial America and stuff like that. It's bullshit. And racism is alive and well in the criminal justice system. I can assure you of that. I can also assure you there are a lot of places where being a medical marijuana patient is, you know, a huge mistake. I had a couple of clients recently. I'm praying that we've got them out of harm's way, but they were an elderly couple that were coming back from a family vacation in Florida in their RV, and they had the misfortune to get stopped in Mississippi. What has 4 eyes and will never see? Mississippi. That's what. They had about 4 ounces of medicine with them. That meant that they were facing, because they were first offenders, they got a 10-year break, but that meant they were facing 20 years in prison. Down from the 30 that he would be facing as a prior offender. Unbelievable that there are laws on the books in this country that would do that to people. And that is why I keep saying over and over again, every Hempfest for the last, I don't know, long time, that we have to change the goddamn laws. They have to change. That's what the problem is. And it starts with the federal law. We have to change the goddamn federal law if we're going to get any progress. We've got a do-nothing Congress, then let's kick those motherfuckers out. like the next chance we get. And let's not vote for people that are stupid anymore. At any rate, I see, and I have to mention this because they're here. Carrie mentioned the Kettle Falls 5 case, and two out of the 5, are here in the front row up here on the left. And if they would stand up for a moment and just wave at you guys, I would like that. These folks, along with mom and stepdad and a friend, were in a recent Time magazine article called The Pot Paradox and some other stuff. I was the first lawyer in on that case in 2012. I took the world-renowned doctor to meet with the U.S. attorney. We met with the U.S. attorney on November 30th of 2012, and we told him it was a medical grow. We told him we could prove it in state court. We told him they had an absolutely airtight, valid defense. Doctor explained all the yield questions. Now, they had this idea that they had super plants. What they had was some indica that these morons had not seen before. At any rate, you know, these folks are looking at dinosaur time in federal prison because they were growing some medical marijuana perfectly in compliance with state law. Now, that's just fucking wrong, period. And there's no excuse for it happening in this country. But it is happening, and it is happening every day. And in Eastern Washington, there is a conspiracy amongst local law enforcement to turn you over to the fucking DEA if they find you with plants. The local sheriff in Yakima says, oh gee, can I come in, take a look at your grow, make sure you're in compliance and all that kind of stuff. And you know what? Comes in, says, hey, everything's great here, but I gotta give the DEA a call, let them know. 2 weeks later, somebody comes in, kicks in your door. Hi, we're the DEA. You're fucked. And then they send it to Mike Ormsby. And you think I'm talking about like hundreds of plants or something, right? I'm talking 15 plants. I'm talking unambiguous and clear compliance with state law via the Ogden memo or the Cole memo or whatever the latest memo on skiing in Utah is. Because they don't have any validity for medical marijuana patients, and they don't save you, and they don't mean a damn thing, and you can't enforce them in court because I know, because I've tried. This is an intolerable situation. To have people like this looking at the end of their lives, virtually, potentially, in federal prison. It was absurd to see Chris Williams in that position. It's absurd to see anyone in that position. But that's where we are. And if we do not get it together and get more active and get in the streets, then we're going to have a drug war, and it's going to continue. And many of you know I am at odds with the reform that is going on now, and the main reason that I am at odds with the reform that's going on now is because it has not changed the goddamn law. The 502 style reform that is being run by a bunch of people with money is doing nothing to end the drug war. It is doing nothing to stop the war on drugs, the war on people that is occurring here, and it's not changing the law at all. It's allowing some folks to make some money, and it's allowing pot for privileged rich folks. But for the rest of us, it's a fucking joke, and it's a bad one. And we need to change the law. We need to get the free market in. We need to do a lot of things. But what we really have to do is change the law and end prohibition and do it now. 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 Fight like hell. End it now.
Good.
Hi, you guys. We're talking about a lot of prisoners and stuff like that. I'm just kind of curious, how many of you guys have children? Okay. How would it be if your child went to prison and was kidnapped and then put up for adoption just because you were a medical marijuana patient? That's what happened. I was told not to fight. I was told that being an activist was harming my child. My child was taken from her mom, not me. She was never given to me. I never had a chance to even meet her. Her name was completely different from what I ever thought it would be. So I went on a search for her and found her through a bunch of crap. Then when I went to go get her, I had to have CPS go down and take care of having to get her because her mom tried to do something that wasn't too right. Put her in a situation where she was in harm's way. And so CPS stepped in and said, okay, well, we'll go get her, keep her for 72 hours. You can go to the shelter care hearing to pick her up. Great, okay. I get to the shelter care hearing, and then all of a sudden, the attorneys look at me and say, well, your ex-wife says that you're a medical marijuana patient.